You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason.
Your co-host, Danny.
And we got a full show for you today. Little college football, NFL, and FIBA basketball. That's the lineup, but it's going to be full. But first, Danny, right into college football, man, and where the Colorado Buffaloes, they do it again. Coach Prime has these boys 2-0. Now, it's 2-0 right now. We're going to see what happens because they got a full and hard schedule coming up with the likes of Oregon and USC and some other schools here. But, Danny, against Nebraska, and where Nebraska's coach tried to call out Coach Prime, Matt Rule, and let's just say you all have seen about this juncture, man. I mean, it's all over social media. All of Coach Prime's pregame speeches, his halftime speeches, and postgame pressers and all. And in his pregame speech, man, he mentioned that it's personal. And the players take that on, and they take it onto the field. And just like his son said on the field, man, it's personal. Danny, all I can say is this, man. Shedeur Sanders goes 31 for 42 for 393 yards, 2 touches. I mean, he is in the running for the Heisman Trophy. I don't see how anyone else can put it. He's in the running. Now, again, Colorado has this tough schedule coming up against, like I mentioned, USC, Oregon, Oregon State. I mean, the list goes on, man. But they face off next week against their rival, Colorado State. Oregon, USC, Arizona State, Stanford, UCLA, Oregon State. That's the next few games that they have. What a weekend in college football. What say you about these Colorado Buffaloes?
Jason, that game actually started off where it was a shutout in the first quarter. It was 0-0. And then Colorado got on the board in the second quarter where they went to halftime up 13-0 and then took over from there. I look at it as it was a statement game, because coming off that high of beating TCU, you just didn't know. It was their first home game, playing in front of your home fans, and all that was the hoopla was going on after that first win. But I look at this game coming up where they should be heavily favored against Colorado State. I believe it's a night game on ESPN. And that's the one where that's the game they cannot let be a letdown game. Going in front of those games you mentioned where they start playing some tougher opponents from the Pac-12. So the games they should win, this will show kind of how they're progressing. You just don't want to slip up against these teams you should beat now. And this was even before these first 2 wins. This was a team, they said if they get that one win, it should be Colorado State. So I'm looking at that game as don't let that one trip you up going into these tougher games. Go into those games being 3-0 and take care of business. And like you said, Shedeur Sanders, man, is playing lights out. He got it going. The defense obviously played really well. And Coach Prime, man, gets W number 2.
Coach Prime does it again. He's already exceeded what has been done last season. Like this second victory, he's already doubled the number of victories of last season. Mm-hmm. So he's already exceeded those expectations. He's about to triple possibly against Colorado State. They're already looking to be in a bowl game. He just needs 6 wins to get into a bowl. That's all. He could be halfway there in the first 3 games. So we'll see what happens here. And Danny, speaking of college football, a couple surprises here. One with Alabama taking an L against Texas And and this was in Alabama at that. And so we'll see what happens, man. But Bama is going to struggle this year, I believe. They're not going to be the strong Bama teams that we've seen of old. And so we'll see what happens here in the top four, especially in the playoffs here. But what say you about Bama?
Jason, I think it's the quarterback. They've had a steady quarterback, a great quarterback at that, for how many years with Nick Saban? And this year's the first year where they haven't had someone who's a standout quarterback. This year may be that off year for Alabama just due to the quarterback play. But we'll see. They have some time. They had to slip up against Texas, and this may open their eyes a little bit once they see the film on some things they can rectify going into their conference schedule, because that's brutal. But if they can't get that consistent quarterback play, Alabama could be on the outside looking in.
So true, Danny. And just as I say that about Bama, let me just say this about my Florida A&M Rattlers, who played South Florida. Took an L, Danny, 38-24. We were in the game the entire way. Musa had 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles by the same student athlete, and we were still in the game, Danny. We're right there. Musa threw for 374 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. A couple of interceptions wasn't his fault. One was pretty much a Hail Mary, if you will. The other was a timing pattern issue there. But we go ahead and we face off against West Florida, Division II team here for our home opener. We'll see what happens. I don't think it's going to be a push around game. I think it's going to be a good game. But nonetheless, I think we're still in the driver's seat for the Celebration Bowl. Danny, this was a full weekend, man, right into the NFL, and where your Atlanta Falcons wins against these Carolina Panthers. What say you about your Atlanta Falcons?
Well, Jason, this was the first game for Bijan Robinson, our talented and vaunted rookie running back. Like I said last week, I didn't know what to expect. We didn't know, because preseason, they don't play preseason. And what ended up happening was Bijan and Tyler Algier split the carries more or less. Cordero Patterson was ruled out. So once he is back, I'm curious again to see how they split the carries and split the workload amongst the three. Desmond Ridder had a modest game where he managed the game. He didn't throw a pick, but he is a younger player, and you're going to see that. It's only his 5th game starting. At that first half was rough. I ain't in front. That was rough to watch because, Bijan had the exciting play where he scored the touchdown, but we weren't throwing the ball, and then we were missing throws, and it was just slow. Kudos to the defense. They kept us in the game. They played really well. Jesse Bates, who we got in offseason from Cincinnati, player of the game in my eyes. He had 2 picks. He had a fumble recovery, a big play when Miles Sanders fumbled I believe it was the 3rd quarter. So I look forward to seeing what they do. And I think from the NFL in general, Jason, with no preseason, I think the first quarter of the season is kind of like the feel out period, right? Everyone's trying to get used to each other. I will highlight some other games, but I think the underlying is teams are just starting to get going. This is real live action against real live opponents in front of fans and the whole 9. So great win by my Falcons, man. I got a little nervous, but we got it.
And those same Falcons will face off against my Green Bay Packers come next week. But first, the Packers went ahead and they handle those little Bears. And 38-20, the 9th straight through Bears. Jordan Love goes for 245 yards, for 3 touchdowns, 15 for 27. Aaron Jones, second half, blew up. Unfortunately, he sat out the rest of the game due to an injury there. But nonetheless, man, Jordan Love and the Packers, they do it once again in Chicago. Uh, I would say this, Danny. I'm happy for what I saw. I'm even going to say this about a kicker. Anders Carlson kicked a 52-yard field goal that could have gone maybe 62 yards. He has a leg. Mm-hmm. And so I think we could use that and leverage that, to get these points, man. So I say all that to say the Packers are in good hands. Again, it was against Chicago. Chicago allowed the most points per game last season. I can see them doing that again this season. I will say, though, man, I feel bad for Justin Fields. That offensive line of the Chicago Bears is atrocious for the third year in a row. And so one has to wonder, is Justin Fields going to remain a Chicago Bear? And yes, for this season, but what about moving forward? And I think he needs to really start thinking about that himself. He hasn't already done so. Mm-hmm. Because Chicago just has never been a quarterback-friendly team down through the years. Just hasn't been. Green Bay Packers are going to be all right. I will say, Danny, one of the surprises of the NFL weekend was Thursday night when the Detroit Lions actually beat the Kansas City Chiefs by 1 point, where the Kansas City Chiefs actually unveiled their banner. And so these Detroit Lions, they're different. And this NFC North division is going to be very interesting. What say you about the Packers? What say you about NFL weekend?
Jason, the Packer game, it was 10-6 at halftime. And it ended up being 38-20. The Bears is, if you remember last year, it was the same situation where I think it was 10-6 or 13-6 or something like that. And then they just said, forget it, we're done. But Romeo Doubs had a great game. Christian Watson didn't play. Jordan Love, like we talked about last week, man, that division is wide open. This is where the Packers defense, if they stand up, and come to play, they should be able to hang with anybody as long as Jordan Love played the way he did yesterday. At first, he was a little shaky because it was his first game, but he got settled in the second half and made some good throws. And the Bears, I don't know what to say about them. You just hope it's just the first game. They just were bad and they can turn it around, but they didn't look good at all.
Their schedule is brutal. They may be the number one draft pick again next year, man.
Yep. And they didn't even, like DJ Moore, they didn't even take advantage of using DJ Moore. No. His speed, like they didn't run any screens for him.
They got some players on offense. It's the O-line, man.
They don't have any time. The 49ers beat the doors off Pittsburgh. Ayuk, McCaffrey look great. You got to talk about Dallas and New York last night. Dallas wins 40-0. And I know it was raining, but dang. New York, Daniel Jones.
Your home opener?
Yeah. Daniel Jones looked very pedestrian. I know he has that Kirk Cousins, playing on national TV syndrome where he just doesn't play well for whatever reason. And last night was no exception. Dallas, you got to give them, their defense was off the hook. They were just, every time you looked up, you talked about the Packers sacking Justin Fields. Dallas was in the backfield by Daniel Jones, it seemed like every time. He had no time to throw. So part of it was his offensive line. The other key game was the Dolphins and the Chargers, where Tyreek Hill, over 200 yards receiving, over 10 receptions. The game was back and forth. Tua put up over 450 yards in the air, and they ended up winning that game by 2. Tyreek is no joke, man. So if they can stay healthy, they'll be a problem. But that defense needs to play a little bit better to support the offense, so they're not in shootouts every week and having to, put up 450 yards in the air in order to win the game. How about you, Jay?
And listen, you hit up on the games that I was interested in, but just to add, man, I didn't know what happened to the Cincinnati Bengals. They did not show up whatsoever against the lowly, I can't say lowly anymore, against the Cleveland Browns. 24-3, Cleveland destroys the Bengals. I don't know what happened to the Bengals, man. I don't know. They just didn't show up at all. The Bengals got some things to clean up. To your earlier point, this could be just preseason hangover. Joe Burrow didn't really play in the preseason at all. So maybe this is that throwaway game for the Bengals. But man, I would have expected them to score more than 3 points with that high potent offense, man. The other thing I just want to make mention of here is to the Dallas Cowboys have 40-0 shutout. Listen, man, Marquise Bell, Florida A&M Rattler, alum who had 8 tackles, 6 of them solo, 1 tackle for a loss. He's doing his thing, man. He's shining bright. Keep a lookout for him, man, Marquise Bell. So we'll see what happens moving forward. And now, lastly, Danny, to FIBA basketball, where the U.S. basketball team, man, they did not medal at all this go around, man. They played in the bronze medal game against Canada, took an L, and fortunately enough, we advanced. We were able to play in the Olympic Games. That's what we have to look forward to right now, Danny, because this particular squad didn't do it. You have stars already, potentially committing or having heavy interest in being a part of the Olympic team. LeBron has basically committed, and it seems like he's recruiting some players here right now, that being Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, and Draymond Green. There's also word about Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, De'Aaron Fox, and Kyrie Irving. Let me just say this, Danny. With this particular lineup, and I'm pretty certain you're going to have to add some more, this is an old lineup. Everybody on here, man, is just about 30 years on up and old in terms of basketball terms. Devin Booker probably the youngest one. De'Aaron Fox probably the youngest ones on the list here so far, along with Jason Tatum. But, man, I think we need to look at getting a little bit younger, getting a little bit taller. Well, we need somebody with a little bit more girth. And we don't have to have a big man who all the time scores. You can have a big man who just totally defends. So that's something I think they need to really take a look at, because the way that we lost, we got exposed defensively. Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, got exposed a little bit there. They didn't really play Brandon Ingram like that. That may be an opportunity there, but nonetheless, there has to be a step on. Man, we got the offense. We can score now. Don't get it twisted. But we got to have some defenders in the middle there. What say you about this FIBA basketball team, Danny?
You hit it right on the head, Jay. Everyone was all over Steve Kerr about the defense, because they're just getting ran up and down, and they couldn't stop anybody. Well, look in the last game against Canada, they gave up 127. This may sound crazy, but even someone like JaVale McGee, if you have all these stars going, you need someone like that knows his role and can defend. He has length. He's athletic. He's a little older, but, you need somebody to protect the rim, honestly. So if you have all these, depending on who ultimately goes to Paris, you just need somebody to protect the rim that has some aggression, because Anthony Davis that's not his role. He wants to score. He doesn't want to bang, because those dudes, when they play the global game, it's way more physical. So you need some people that can take that physicality. You can just dedicate them to that. You look at someone like Brook Lopez, another one, just somebody to protect the rim. Brook is, as big as he is, that may not, he could fit that game. All in all, they just need to improve on the roster ahead of the Olympics. They have the berth now. Compliment Anthony Edwards and some of the guys that actually stood out on the team, and don't overhaul it completely, because there are some guys that actually had a good tournament. But I do agree that they do need some additions here. We'll see what they have some learnings from this, and with LeBron leading the charge, I'm sure he can get some people there. It would be cool to see, obviously, but disappointment nonetheless for them taking fourth.
Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.